LSU loses to Ole Miss 24-19. How did it happen, and where did the Tigers go from here? Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. LSU loses to Ole Miss 24-19. The Tigers fall for the first time this season in Oxford. And now they find themselves going into their open date, looking for answers on the offensive side of the ball and looking at how they're going to piece together the remainder of this season with 6 SEC games remaining and still a lot to play for, but a lot that needs to be rectified. So thank you for being here with us. I'll start with the obvious. You all know, and I'm sure there's many of our Ole Miss friends who are here watching and listening to this today as well. Congrats on the win. I was very bullish on LSU, not just to win this game, but to win it comfortably. And I feel like LSU, like Ole Miss a year ago, had the more talented team. I think the proof in that will come in April's NFL draft. Just look at the defensive side of the ball. Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Bernard Gooden, Whit Weeks, Harold Perkins, Mansour Delane, AJ Halsey, all those guys are going to be drafted in April. Like LSU could have the most players selected in the upcoming NFL draft. They are a more talented team than Ole Miss. And when the more talented team doesn't win, it's usually two things. It's coaching and it's execution. And both of those things evaded LSU on Saturday. Ole Miss outcoached and out-executed LSU, specifically at about the 6:49 mark of the second quarter on, which is why the game ended the way it did. Like we always do, I want to run through the game flow, how it all played out, and we'll certainly talk about what this loss means for LSU and what's left on the table for the Tigers and how they pick it up going from here. But I was wrong. I was wrong about this game. There's no other way to say it. There's no hiding from that. It's a massive disappointment. And maybe the most disappointing part of all of this is LSU had their opportunities in this football game the way it played out. But ultimately, LSU's inability to develop any semblance of a running game once again bit it. There's a column up at LouisianaSports.net written by my colleague Hunt Palmer. I would encourage anybody to go read. And the headline is Ineffective Run Game Plaguing LSU's Program. And the reality that we have to discuss, and I know many of you already have, is the persistent problem. And it's not just been this year. LSU a season ago was dead last in the SEC in rushing offense. But the thing that's interesting, even if you go back to 2023, Jaden's Heisman season, and you look at the running backs, LSU's running backs in the loss to Florida State, 54 yards on 12 carries. In their loss to Alabama, running backs had 43 yards on 13 carries. Against Texas A&M, which was an LSU win, 15 rushes for 36 yards from the running backs. Effectively, the argument has been made that Jaden Daniels camouflaged a lot of what has been wrong in this running game. And the more the sample size grows, the more it's hard to argue against that. LSU has talented offensive linemen. You just had 4 guys selected in the NFL draft. So why are you unable to run the ball? Well, it's probably a combination of a lot of things. Lack of poor offensive line play. At times, poor vision by the running backs, play call, scheme, commitment to running the football. All of that is factoring in. And on Saturday, this cost LSU. There was no Caden Durham. And in the first half of the football game against Ole Miss, LSU's running backs had a grand total of 2 rushing attempts. LSU in the first half ran 24 plays, 9 rushes, 15 passes. 1 rush for Caleb Jackson on a 3rd and 20, where they handed him the ball just to get what he could get before he punted. He ran for 10 yards. And 1 rush by Juwan Johnson for -1 yard. The other 8 carries were a sack, 1 rushing attempt by Garrett Nussmeier, Berrien Brown, Xavier Thomas. taking handoffs. It was a complete mess where LSU didn't even attempt to commit to running the football. Now, in the second half, the majority of their rushing yards from Harlem Berry came as Ole Miss was kind of playing soft and just allowing the clock to bleed with a lead. But this is the singular thing that LSU has got to figure out, whatever it may be. For all the complaints people are going to have about Garrett Nussmeier, which are warranted, about Joe Sloan, which are warranted, about the defense's inability on third down on Saturday, which we'll talk about here in a second, which are warranted. The single biggest thing that will keep this team, not the program, this team from reaching the goals that it wants is so far its inability to run the football. LSU was facing a rush defense from Ole Miss that was allowing 190 rushing yards per game. Arkansas ran it for over 200. Kentucky ran it. Tulane ran it for 180 against Ole Miss. And LSU on the day against Ole Miss managed a grand total of 57 rushing yards on 22 carries for an average of 2.6 yards per carry. Until LSU fixes that, this offense will go nowhere. For all the people that are complaining about Garrett Nussmeier, and we'll talk about that in a second, if you watch the broadcast, Greg McElroy was pointing it out over and over and over again. Ole Miss was rushing 3, dropping 8. It is hard for any quarterback to throw when defenders are dropping 8 men into coverage. The way you stop them from dropping 8 is running the football. And LSU, despite facing a 3-man front, could not run the ball and at times could not protect Garrett Nussmeier. And that is a problem because Ole Miss does not have, and this is not, I do not mean this to be disrespectful, but Ole Miss does not have guys on that defensive front that are going to be professional players. Centarian Perkins, I think, will be a professional football player. But Clemson and Florida have NFL, have dudes that will be drafted, will be high draft picks, high NFL talent. So I could have bought the argument about how you approach the game against those teams because of their ability and their talent on the defensive front, especially with 5 new starters on the offensive line. Saturday in Oxford, that should have changed against a lesser team than the ones you had faced in that defensive front already, and it didn't. You tip your hat to Ole Miss for a game well played. They outplayed and outcoached LSU. They deserve to win. I'm not arguing against that. But this isn't an Ole Miss show. This is how does LSU fix the thing that ails them so they can push forward with 6 conference games to play. They're going to have to figure out how they can establish a running game moving forward. About the game itself, listen, we can talk about several things. Of course, if you didn't notice, Weston Davis, the starting right tackle, was injured in pregame warmup. So Carius Kern, the true freshman, ended up starting at right tackle. And then in the second half, on the second possession, Paul Mabenga was injured. And so Cohen Eccles went in at left guard. So you were down 2 starters on an already struggling offensive line in this football game. You obviously were without Caden Durham. And so Juwan Johnson got the start at running back, but he only had 1 carry in the first half. And really it was Harlem Berry who got going later in the second half. It was a game where you won the turnover margin. Ole Miss threw an interception, fumbled deep in the red zone, and had double-digit penalties. Ole Miss committed 14 penalties for 109 yards, and LSU still lost the football game. There is no way to look at it when you have a more talented roster. You won the turnover margin, and the other team had 100 yards in penalties, and you lost the football game, then you were out-executed and you were out-coached on Saturday in Oxford, Mississippi. And that is a really disappointing thing for LSU. I want to go through the game flow. We'll do that as we continue here. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. You can just move through life, or you can find things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there. Choose your people. You can choose to go for it, like really go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Mazda. Move and be moved. We're also brought to you by DoorDash. And as a matter of fact, I just DoorDashed pizza and wings. And so as soon as I finish this episode, I'm going to go eat the pizza and wings that I just had DoorDash. The weekend is here. Look back on this week's MVP and who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. Hard to pick anyone on the LSU football team with the loss to Ole Miss, but the defense I thought played their best, and they were on the field for more than 80 snaps. So to be out there for as much as LSU was for 84 snaps and to keep grinding it out and hold that offense to 24 points, we'll credit and hat tip the LSU defense. DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And we're brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with a brand new Peloton cross-training tread. Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you play, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love how Peloton IQ systems offer real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps. It suggests the right weights. It corrects your form. It makes every rep safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com, O-N-E, that's onepeloton.com. All right, let's run through the game. I know you don't want to relive this, but we'll run through some of it. And it couldn't have started better for LSU, quite honestly. Ole Miss elected to receive. Lane Kiffin wanted to put his offense out there to see if they could go score first. And LSU promptly forced a 3-and-out. First time in 11 games, Ole Miss failed to convert a first down on its opening possession of the ball game. So LSU gets the 3-and-out, and they're going to get the ball to start the second half. LSU punted on its first possession, but then LSU got another 3-and-out. It looked exactly like we thought it was going to look. LSU's second possession, first play, boom, 50 yards to Xavier Thomas. LSU, just a handful of plays. They're in the end zone. Pass intended for Trey'Dez Green. Nick Anderson catches it off the deflection. LSU is up 7-0. And just like that, you've scored. You've hit a big play against a suspect secondary. You forced back-to-back 3-and-outs. It feels like this is what the game was supposed to look like. Ole Miss gets the football. They decide to run out the kickoff, and you pin them out the 10-yard line. You're feeling really good. But Ole Miss started to convert. They converted a 3rd and 6. They converted a 3rd and 1. They converted a 3rd and 5. They converted a 3rd and, they had a 3rd and 4, and Patrick Payton deflected the ball at the line of scrimmage, forcing a 25-yard field goal. That was an 18-play drive for Ole Miss. So at this point in the game, there's 1:40 left in the first quarter. LSU's up 7-3, and you feel like you are in total command of this game. You forced 2 3-and-outs. You hit a big play. You scored a touchdown. They put together an 18-play drive, but my goodness, if Lane Kiffin wants to sit there and dink and dunk 18 plays down the field, okay, especially for a team that's been mired with penalties, like it's probably going to go fine for the LSU defense because eventually they're going to get the negative play. They're going to make the mistake. They'll get behind the sticks. LSU gets the ball back, and this is where the game changed. LSU is going right down the field. There's a PI on Ole Miss. Chris Hilton gets a 10-yard reception with the personal foul added on for hands to the face. Before you know it, LSU's at their 29-yard line. LSU's up 7-3. They're right down the field again right at the start of the second quarter. They're at the Ole Miss 29-yard line. You're in field goal range. And on first down, Garrett Nussmeier inexplicably throws the ball into coverage and throws an interception. And those are the types of plays that can't happen. Look, if Garrett airs it out, Xavier Thomas was behind the defender, he could have had a touchdown if he went for Thomas. Instead, he went underneath, I believe it was Barry and Brown, into coverage, and it gets intercepted. And at that moment, the game changed. The whole time, tempo, tenor of the whole game changed. Now, you forced a punt on the next possession, but after that, LSU went 3-and-out. And it was not a good-looking 3-and-out. Ole Miss got the ball with 9:43 to play in the half, trailing 7-3. Keep in mind, your defense has only allowed 3 points. And this is where it looks like they're going to score, and A.J. Halsey comes up with the big punch-out. The fumble, which goes into the end zone. Whit Weeks recovers. LSU gets the touchback. There's 8 minutes to go in the first half. LSU's up 7-3, and you got the ball. And this is the sequence where you can't help but look at this sequence encapsulating the entire game for LSU. You're up 7-3. You get the big play defensively. You force the fumble. You got the ball. And first down, beautiful play design. You get a 10-yard reception, but Trey'Dez Green holding. So 1st and 10 now becomes 1st and 20. On first down, beautiful play design. listen, we can criticize Joe Sloan. It was not a great day offensively. And if you want to criticize the offensive coordinator, by all means, criticize the offensive coordinator. But credit where it's due as well. On first down, Joe Sloan calls a play. Aaron Anderson finds a soft spot in the zone, about 18 yards downfield. On 1st and 20, Nussmeier airmails it. Aaron Anderson gets upended, gets hurt on that play. So now you don't have Aaron Anderson the rest of the game. On 2nd and 20, Nuss is rolling to his right, throws it in triple coverage, looking for Trey'Dez Green. It's almost intercepted. Thankfully, it didn't. After those two plays, they said, you know what? Just run the ball and let's punt. They handed to Caleb Jackson 10 yards. They punt. The interception was a terrible decision. The throw to Aaron Anderson was a bad throw. The throw toward Trey'Dez Green was a terrible decision. Nuss was unraveling at this point. LSU punts. You give the ball back to Ole Miss with 6:49 to play. And this, it's this sequence that encapsulates the game. Again, you're still up 7-3. You've given up 3 points. Your defense is playing outstanding against one of the best offenses in the country, right? They hold on first down, so it's a 1st and 20 for them. And you pressure Chambliss. He's backpedaling toward the goal line, fires. You think it's going to be a grounding. Instead, they call a personal foul on West Weeks. You bail them out. They're back against their goal line, and you bail them out. You bail them out with that personal foul. And as it would happen, you'd end up with that personal foul, 2 pass interference, and an offside. You gave them 50 yards in penalties. And oh, by the way, one of those PIs was the pick 6 by DJ Pickett, where Pickett didn't even need to touch the receiver. The receiver was breaking in. Chambliss threw the ball to the boundary, and Pickett intercepted it and ran it back 72 yards for a touchdown. So instead of 14-3 LSU with about 5 minutes to go in the first half and a pick 6 and a total game, you're up 2 scores and you got them scrambling, and the guy who hadn't turned it over yet now is thrown to pick 6. Now, PI, the next play PI, they'd end up in the end zone, and now they have a 10-7 lead. How quickly it can change. So many opportunities were there for LSU. In that first half, Nuss threw the interception. You had a face mask on Buddy Mathis. You had the hold on Trey'Dez, which negated a 10-yard pass. You had the personal foul on West Weeks, which got them out of the shadow of their own goal post. You had the PI on DJ Pickett, which negated his 72-yard interception return for a touchdown. And then after they score to go up 10-7, you get the ball with 4:53. This is a perfect opportunity with 4:53 to play to go into your 4-minute offense. Go into your 4-minute offense, bleed the clock, put points on the board, either tie it, take the lead, and then you're getting the ball to start the second half. Get points to start the second half, you're back in command, and the whole game changes. Instead, LSU ends up punting. Now, it's also worth mentioning, again, you want to criticize play calling, fine. Give credit where it's due as well. The first play of that series was a beautifully designed play where everything was going left, and they completed to Xavier Thomas on the right for 12 yards. But Xavier Thomas tiptoed the sideline, and if he manages to keep his footing in bounds, he's going to score. There is nothing in his way. This is going to be an 80-yard catch-and-run touchdown on the first play of that series, and instead, Xavier Thomas, look, he tiptoed the sideline, and he went out of bounds. But if he had maintained his footing in bounds, he's going to score. Instead, after that, you end up punting. They get the ball with 2:16. Your defense is gassed. And hat tip Ole Miss, they put together a beautiful 2-minute drive. You had the opportunity in a 10-7 ball game to go to your 4-minute offense, bleed clock, get points, and go back-to-back. Instead, you punt. They get the ball with 2 minutes, execute a beautiful 2-minute offense, score. It's 17-7. Ole Miss is up 10 going into half. So LSU gets the ball. Again, halftime, Ole Miss ran 49 plays in the first half. LSU ran 24. 15 passes, 9 runs. Your inability to run the football just killed you in this football game. And in the second half, you had your opportunities again. You had your opportunities. You got the ball to start the second half. You end up punting. You get a first down, but you end up punting. You force a punt from them. You get the ball back, and you end up deep in their territory. Unfortunately, Nuss misses Chris Hilton on a deep ball, so you settle for a field goal, but it's 17-10. You're back into a 1-score game. PJ Woodland gets an interception. Now you got a short field again. You end up settling for a field goal, but it's 17-13. You're within a 1-score game again. You got to go get a stop. And on this series, they converted a 3rd and 14. Time and again, Trinidad Chambliss was able to convert 3rd and longs. And we know what LSU was doing. They would play a shell to prevent him from running. And so they weren't pressuring him, which allowed him to look and throw, and he completed passes. Accurate, made good decisions. When LSU brought pressure, he recognized it and ran. Time and again, that was the case. And on 3rd and 14, in a 17-13 game, at the start of the fourth quarter, LSU's about to get the ball back with good field position, and instead, 3rd and 14, they convert with an 18-yarder, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays later, they were in the end zone. It was 24-13. At that point, it felt like ball game. Now, credit LSU because they did put together the 80-yard touchdown drive. 15 plays, 80 yards. They got in the end zone of the Harlan Berry touchdown to pull within 24-19. The two-point conversion play call was one of the most hideous things I've ever seen. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish, motioning Juwan Johnson back into the backfield from the left hash and everything. It was an awful play call, awful design. It didn't work. So you need to get a stop and a touchdown. Ole Miss gets the ball with 5 minutes to go, 5:04 to be exact. And you had an opportunity. 3rd and 4, Trinidad Chambliss runs out of bounds with stopping the clock with 1:47, a boneheaded play. 4th and 3, Lane Kiffin's got a decision to make. At that situation, do you kick the field goal to go up 8, or do you go for it? If you miss, LSU gets a short field, touchdown beats you. He went for it. LSU had to respect Trinidad Chambliss' ability to run the football. They left the tight end 8 open. He ran for 20 yards. Ball game over. You had opportunities. You had opportunities to win that game, and ultimately, you weren't able to execute. You got out-coached. You tip your cap to Lane Kiffin, to Charlie Weiss Jr., to their staff, Pete Golding, that were able to do what they needed to do to get that win for Ole Miss. And so Ole Miss moves to 5-0. LSU drops to 4-1. Tigers are 1-1 in conference play. So I know the question now becomes for LSU, where do you go from here? I know the reaction from some is going to be, well, season's over. And it's just not a smart thing to say. Like, just bear with me. Please just bear with me. In 2022, Brian Kelly's first year, LSU looked like mud losing in the Superdome to Florida State. And then they got blown out at home by Tennessee. That team ended up beating Ole Miss, an undefeated top 10 Ole Miss team in Baton Rouge. They beat Alabama, and they ended up going to the SEC championship game. Now, they lost there to Georgia, but they got better because teams are allowed to improve. Let me remind you, a year ago, Ohio State won the national championship. The narrative around Ohio State for much of that season was, with their new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, why was the offense at Ohio State with all this talent struggling? They lost at Oregon. They lost the final regular season date on their home field against a 500 Michigan team. I mean, it was brutal. And then they figured it out and won a national championship. I'm not sitting here today, a couple hours recording this after LSU lost to Ole Miss, telling you LSU is going to win the national championship. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm telling you is what I say in every sport all the time is, throughout the course of a season, teams are allowed to improve. If this were the BCS era, that would have been devastating. You would have almost no opportunity of coming back. You'd have to win out. And even that might not be enough. But it's a 12-team playoff era. What this loss has done is eliminated your margin for error, which is the benefit of that Clemson win. Because had you lost to Clemson and now lost to Ole Miss, you'd have to run the table. But having beaten Clemson, now this loss to Ole Miss stings. But what it effectively means is the rest of the way, you can only lose one more time. And you can roll your eyes at that, but as you sort of play it out, I'd put it to you this way. You get an open date this week. You get an opportunity to get a lot of guys healthy. Look, if something is bothering Nussmeier, which it might be, here's an opportunity to get him healthy. I struggle with that because I know a lot of people look and say something's wrong with Nuss. I struggle with that because we weren't having the conversation after last Saturday. They played Southeastern, and I'm not talking about scoring 56. I'm talking about just the ability, right? He had accuracy on the deep ball. He was torquing. He was throwing with zip. Like, he looked physically fine. So did he somehow deteriorate this week? That's where I struggle with that component of it. But maybe it is, you get this open date, Nuss can rest. Caden Durham will be back after the open date. You get an opportunity to get Weston Davis, whatever happened with Weston Davis in pregame, which we'll find out, to get him healthy. Paul Mabenga, who went down in this game with injury. Tradez Green, West Weeks, guys who've been dealing with some of these nicks and bumps and bruises, to get an opportunity to get healthy. Then you come home against South Carolina, who's a disaster. And with LSU's defense, playing in Tiger Stadium, it's going to be hell on wheels for any team to try to get something going against that defense in Tiger Stadium. LSU is going to be a big favorite over South Carolina, and then they'll go to Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's playing exceptionally well. They're 5-0. And they get Alabama next week, so we'll see what happens there. But I think LSU will be a favorite in Nashville, and they should win that game. Then you come home against Texas A&M. Texas A&M offensively moved the ball, struggled to score against Auburn. That game is in Baton Rouge. You're probably going to be a slight favorite in that game in Baton Rouge. If you manage to win your next three, then you go into your second open date before you play Alabama. And you go into November needing to basically go 3-1. You'll have Bama, Arkansas, who's terrible, and will probably fire Sam Pittman, Western Kentucky, and then Oklahoma, which means you win the 2 home games, you have to split Alabama, Oklahoma. If you do that, you're 10-2. Is that plausible? Again, I'm not sitting here predicting it. I'm not telling you it's definitively going to happen and LSU's going to the playoff. I'm just sitting here saying, is it plausible to say, could the path I just laid out for you happen for LSU? I think it is. They'll probably be underdogs at Bama, at Oklahoma, considering what's happened now. We'll see how that may shift by the time we get there, but you're probably favored in all the other games. So if we looked at it going into the season and we looked and said, all right, the 3 road conference games, Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, 3 toughest games on the schedule along with Clemson, could you find a way to win one of those 3 conference games on the road? And if you do that, hold serve at home, you're 10-2, you're in the playoff. That's the path. Now, to get there, they've got to figure out how to run the football, because Brian Kelly said it. You just cannot sustain this where you're relying on your defense to be perfect. Like LSU's defense was gassed. They were on the field for 85 plays. Ole Miss on third down was 8 of 17. So they were still sub 500 on third downs, but they converted a lot of big third downs. And they converted on fourth down. They converted twice on fourth down. So really the 8 of 17 on fourth down becomes like 10 because they converted on those fourth downs. As you do 8 of 17 on third down. You got to be better on third down. You got to be able to get off the field. There are some of those things that are legitimate, but also the offense has to be able to play complementary football. You can't leave your defense on the field for 84 plays, 49 in the first half. They're going to wear down. I don't care how deep and talented you are. You're going to get tired. You're going to have letdowns. You're going to wear down. They've got to learn how to run the football. If LSU can run the football, it's going to take some of those defenders out of the secondary, bring them down into the box, and it'll open up passing lanes for Nuss and the passing game. It'll make you more balanced. It'll allow you to bleed more clock. It'll take pressure off the defense. We all know this. You watch football, but by the nature of the fact you're listening to or watching this podcast, you know this. So it's so much of this is they've got to spend this time in the open date figuring out, how do you run the football? Is it improving on the offensive line? Is it going into power formations where you use a tight end as a fullback, or Bo Bordelon, who's normally the tight end eligible, basically an extra offensive lineman with a tight end number blocking, to use him as a fullback to go into power formations? Is it scheme? Is it just willingness to consistently call running plays, which Joe Sloan didn't do? They ran the ball 9. They had 9 running plays in the first half against Ole Miss, only 2 carries to running backs. That's unacceptable at any level of football. They need to take this open date to get healthy and to figure that out. And if they're able to start getting the ground game going a little bit, this team can achieve everything at once. Because a healthy Garrett Nussmeier, we know what he looks like. We don't have to guess. We saw him last year throw for 4,000 yards in the toughest league in America. It's why he was a Heisman preseason frontrunner. Like, we know Garrett Nussmeier can do it. Take a week, get healthy, figure out how to get your running game going, and get ready to go play South Carolina 2 weeks for a week from this coming Saturday in Baton Rouge, and start your climb. It's a long climb. It's a long season. You have 6 league games to go. But if you want to be a playoff contending team, you have the pieces in place. You got to figure out how to run the football. They do that, this team can achieve what they want to achieve. If not, it's going to be a very disappointing end to a season that began with lofty expectations and a huge financial investment, kind of like Ole Miss a year ago. What a role reversal. LSU was an inferior roster to Ole Miss a year ago and won the game in Baton Rouge, really disrupting Ole Miss's season. And the tables turned on Saturday. Ole Miss with an inferior roster upsets LSU and really put LSU in a bind now, as the Rebs are 5-0 as they embark on the remainder of their schedule. And we'll see what the rest of the season may hold for the rest of the Southeastern Conference. Of course, we'll be right here for it on Locked On LSU. Okay, that'll do it for us here on the post game. You know the drill. Drop your comments. Let me know what you think about everything. My guess is if you're listening to or watching this on Sunday morning after you've slept it off, had your coffee, gone to church, and listening to or watching this, might be a little more tempered than you would if you're right here with exposed nerve endings after the game. But nonetheless, sincerely appreciate you for being here with us. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.